Since the year 2000, China has poured a staggering amount of money into Africa, a cumulative total of over $170 billion in loans by 2022. That money has financed everything from continent-spanning highways to brand new cities. So, is this a golden age of development for Africa, or the dawn of a new colonial era? While the West has been watching from the sidelines, a geopolitical battle has been heating up for the future of the world's youngest, fastest growing continent. This isn't just about building roads and railways. It's a contest for resources, for influence, and for the allegiance of 1.4 billion people. What's unfolding across Africa is a high-stakes power play that could redefine the global order for the next century. The question is no longer if this will change the world, but how. Section 1. The Blueprint, China's Economic Onslaught. To get what's happening, you have to grasp the sheer scale of China's ambition. This is not a scattered collection of projects, it's a meticulous, continent-wide strategy. Since the turn of the millennium, China has become Africa's single largest trading partner. Now, it's difficult to independently verify the numbers, but according to Chinese state sources, their companies have helped build or upgrade nearly 100,000 kilometers of highways, roughly 1,000 bridges, and almost 100 ports. They also claim to have constructed a staggering 66,000 kilometers of new power lines and built an installed power capacity of 120 million kilowatts. The engine driving this transformation is the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. It's Beijing's grand vision for a modern Silk Road, a sprawling network of land and sea connections designed to physically link China with the world. And Africa is its centerpiece. The goal is to create seamless corridors for trade, getting African resources to Chinese factories and Chinese goods to African markets. You can see this on the ground in projects almost too big to comprehend. In Nigeria, Chinese loans are part funding the $4.9 billion Mambilla hydroelectric plant, set to be the nation's largest power station. In Mozambique, a Chinese corporation built Africa's longest suspension bridge, connecting the capital Maputo to its suburb of Katembe and turning a journey that once took hours into mere minutes. In Kenya, the Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway, financed and built by China, has become the backbone of the country's logistics, cutting travel times and boosting commerce all along its route. From the Kribi Deep Seaport in Cameroon, now a strategic hub on the Atlantic coast, to the Daer wind farm in South Africa, the physical landscape of the continent is being redrawn. And it goes beyond transport and energy. China has set up 25 economic and trade cooperation zones across 16 African countries, creating industrial parks designed to kickstart local manufacturing. This isn't just about pulling resources out of the ground, it's about building the entire value chain, from the mine to the factory to the port. The message from Beijing is clear. We are not just a partner, we are the partner for Africa's modernization. Section 2. The win-win narrative versus the debt trap accusation. China frames its approach as a revolutionary break from the past. For decades, Western aid came with strings attached, demands about democracy, human rights, and governance. Beijing offers a different deal. You run your country your way, and we'll build your infrastructure. This story of win-win cooperation is incredibly appealing to many African leaders tired of what they see as Western lectures. This philosophy is put into action through the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC. Held every few years since 2000, FOCAC is a diplomatic masterclass, bringing together nearly every African head of state to sign massive new deals. The 2024 summit, for example, concluded with a pledge of over $50 billion in financial support for the continent. However, this fire hose of funding has fueled a potent counter-narrative from the West: debt trap diplomacy. The argument is that China is knowingly luring African nations into taking on unsustainable debt. When a country can't pay, the theory goes, Beijing can seize strategic assets, a port, a railway, a mine, or demand political loyalty. Critics point to projects they claim were overpriced and came with high interest rates. And there's no doubt that debt is a serious issue in several African nations. The sheer amount of Chinese lending has changed the continent's debt profile. But the reality on the ground is more complex than either the perfect win-win story or the sinister debt trap narrative. In recent years, as its own economy has slowed, China has become more cautious. Its lending for huge infrastructure projects has actually dropped, hitting a nearly two-decade low in 2022 at under $1 billion. Beijing is now shifting its focus from state-led loans to encouraging private investment and building up industries. There's a growing understanding that building a port is one thing, but making sure it's part of a thriving economy is another. The debt is real, but the accusation of a deliberate plan to entrap nations is still fiercely debated. Section 3. The Western Response. A day late and a dollar short? For decades, the West, especially the US and former colonial powers in Europe, were the dominant outside players in Africa. But as China's footprint has grown, Western influence has clearly shrunk. The West's model of conditional aid has struggled to compete with China's fast, no-strings-attached way of getting things done. The Western response has been slow and, many argue, reactive. It wasn't until the Belt and Road Initiative was nearly a decade old that the US and its G7 partners announced a rival plan. The Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, or PGII. Its flagship project in Africa is the Lobito Corridor. This ambitious plan aims to build and refurbish a railway connecting the mineral-rich areas of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo to the port of Lobito in Angola. On paper, it's a direct challenge to China. The US and EU are helping finance the railway, along with investments in 5G, solar power, and agriculture. It's being sold as a more transparent, high-quality alternative, focused on local jobs and higher standards. But the scale of the challenge is immense. The Lobito Corridor is one project. China has hundreds. The US hasn't traditionally backed this kind of large-scale construction in Africa, which highlights how long it's been absent from this space. Furthermore, American policy has been inconsistent. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, which has given African nations duty-free access to U.S. markets for over 2 decades, faces an uncertain future. Its renewal is being debated ahead of a September 2025 expiration, creating anxiety among African exporters. This is a sharp contrast to China's consistent engagement. For 35 straight years, China's foreign minister has made Africa the first foreign trip of the new year. Every single year. That consistency sends a powerful message. The West is now in a game of catch-up, trying to counter a rival that had a 20-year head start. Section 4, the real battleground: technology, energy, and influence. The geopolitical contest for Africa goes far beyond concrete and steel. It's now being fought in the critical sectors of the 21st century: technology, energy, and digital influence. While you can see the ports and railways, the battle for Africa's digital backbone is arguably more important. Chinese tech giant Huawei has built a huge portion of Africa's 4G networks and is a key player in the 5G rollout. This has set off alarm bells in Washington, which fears that reliance on Chinese tech could create security risks, giving Beijing potential access to sensitive data or the ability to disrupt critical infrastructure. The U.S. has actively campaigned against Huawei, but for many African nations, the affordable price and proven quality are hard to pass up. The same dynamic is playing out in energy. As the world pivots to a green transition, Africa's vast resources of sun, wind, and critical minerals are incredibly valuable. China isn't just financing old-school fossil fuel projects, it's become a major player in Africa's renewable energy sector. Chinese firms are behind projects like massive solar installations in Kenya and wind farms in South Africa. By positioning itself as a key partner in Africa's green transition, China expands its influence in another vital domain. This is all propped up by a relentless diplomatic and cultural offensive. The annual foreign minister visits are just one piece of it. FOCAC has become the premier event for high-level engagement. China also funds thousands of scholarships for African students and invests heavily in media and cultural centers across the continent. This multi-pronged strategy, combining economic, technological, and diplomatic power, is designed to create a deep structural dependency where aligning with Beijing isn't just a choice but the most logical path forward. Section 5. Africa's agency playing the game. It's a profound mistake to see Africa as a passive chessboard for great powers. African nations are not merely pawns in this geopolitical game. Increasingly, their leaders are getting skilled at navigating this complex new world, leveraging the rivalry between China and the West to their own advantage. They are playing the game. This new era of competition has given African governments something they haven't had in generations: options. For decades, the main sources of development finance were Western-led institutions like the World Bank and IMF. Now, if a Western offer isn't good enough, there's a real alternative in Beijing. This allows them to play one side against the other to negotiate better terms and bigger commitments. We see this happening in real time. Angola awarded the contract to renovate a railway for the Lobito corridor to a European consortium backed by the US, turning down a Chinese proposal. At the same time, African leaders continue to attend FOCAC in Beijing to make the case for new Chinese funding. They are taking a pragmatic, interest-driven approach, partnering with whoever offers the best deal for their country. The results on the ground are a mixed bag. The flood of Chinese capital has delivered undeniable benefits, fueling job creation and connecting Africa to global supply chains. Chinese sources claim their enterprises have created over 1.1 million jobs across Africa in just 3 years, though this figure isn't independently verified. But there are also real challenges. Some huge infrastructure projects are underused, and critics say the no-strings-attached model can empower elites at the expense of transparency or reform. The challenge for African nations is to harness the benefits of this new rivalry while avoiding the pitfalls of relying too much on any single partner. CTA. This battle for influence is a complex, constantly evolving story. Understanding how these global power plays affect specific regions is crucial. If you want to see more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And let us know in the comments, who do you think is winning the geopolitical battle for Africa, and what does it mean for the continent's future? Conclusion: the new scramble for Africa? What we are witnessing is nothing less than a complete reordering of Africa's relationship with the world. For over a century, the continent's destiny was shaped largely by its engagement with the West. That era is definitively over. China's meteoric rise has shattered the old status quo, presenting Africa with a new paradigm for development. But this isn't simply China versus the West. It is a multipolar contest where African nations themselves are increasingly assertive, charting their own course through a turbulent geopolitical sea. The continent's leaders are leveraging this rivalry to forge a future on their own terms, seeking to build the roads, power plants, and digital networks that will serve their people. The ultimate outcome of this geopolitical battle is far from certain. Will it usher in a true African renaissance fueled by strategic investments and a newfound global relevance? Or will it become a 21st century version of the scramble for Africa, a cautionary tale of debt and dependency? The only certainty is that the fate of Africa will be one of the most consequential stories of our time, and the world cannot afford to look away.